morning, we interrupt our scheduled programming with breaking news reports coming in from around the globe.
That's right, from America to the Caribbean, from West Africa to Europe, people are awakening to the truth about who the true chosen people of the Bible are.
Our field reporters have put together some recent testimonials from various individuals. The story may challenge your perspective.
So I'm going to tell you what's going on in America right now, but most of y'all are not going to like this. We are literally in a let my people go moment. Moses versus Pharaoh. I'm talking about plagues and all. Because after 400 years of oppression and marginalization, the black community rose up in 2020 to demand justice from Pharaoh. It came with a plague called COVID that left over 1 million people dead. Still, we did not listen. Instead, we hardened our hearts. So more plagues have followed. The second plague was the big lie, the loss of truth. The third plague was January 6th, the loss of the rule of law. The fourth plague, the plague of tariffs, the loss of economic stability. And the fifth plague, the plague of ICE raids, the loss of human dignity and decency. Our economy is shrinking. Our global standing in the world is diminishing. Our rights are being eroded every single day. And it's going to get worse and worse and worse until we listen to the voice of the black community calling for justice. Let my people go. And remember, those people didn't go away empty-handed. The Bible says they plundered the Egyptians, asking for silver and gold. So don't forget, the wealth transfer is part of the deal.
Might hurt some feelings, but guess what? The black people living in the Americas are the chosen people of God.
Shalom. My name is Ronette Brooks, and before I get started, I want to say all praises to the Most High. I am a Gentile, and it is very important because I know that Israelites that are in the truth and know who they are going to be hearing my voice. This is not about me, but I do want you to know enough about me that you can know a small piece of my heart. I have known who so-called African Americans are in the United States since 2019. The Most High allowed me to know that they were the tribe of Judah. I've learned since then that it might be some Benjamites in there and some Levites, but all I want to say is I am here with a humble heart, and I am infinitely in awe because I know that I'm speaking to the light of the world.
All right, I'm going to stop her right there. How does her and people like her know that we are the children of Israel, but you don't know that? How does she know we are the light of the world, but you don't know that? How does she know that if you're out here condemning people to hell, you're going to end up right in that same pit with them, but you don't know that? I want y'all to think of it. Wake up! Berean Scholar. Berean Scholar. Waking up the people of the Most High. Got the knowledge to destroy the lies. DNA history, open eyes. Walk into the darkness and turn on the lights. Wake up, 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 wake up.
For many, Black History Month is a crucial time to honor significant figures and events. But a recent reflection we are discussing today raises a provocative point. After decades, I've realized I've lived through more than 50 years of Black History Month indoctrination. Year after year, the same story is repeated by our schools, our media, and even our religious institutions, a narrow narrative that begins with our arrival on the shores of the Americas and the Caribbean. Don't misunderstand me. We must honor those who paid unimaginable prices to push our people forward. The inventors, builders, and leaders who sacrificed everything to make this country better. Their names and their blood matter. But when the same story is told over and over, it forces a deeper question to rise. Why are we the only people on earth taught to believe we have no history, no homeland, no heritage to claim? After centuries of slavery, abuse, mutilation, and terror, our ancestors were kidnapped, carried to foreign lands, and stripped of their names, their languages, and their customs. Entire systems were built to crush identity, to dehumanize, and to normalize erasure, and many of those systems are still standing today. Research even shows that people severed from family and ancestral ties face higher risks of instability throughout life. So this isn't just history we're talking about. It's memory, identity, and the psychological cost of being taught that your story begins in chains. Before we were enslaved, we were someone. And this journey begins by tearing down the systems of erasure and following our identity all the way back home. It's time for us to wake up and discover the whole truth in order for us to truly be free.
All right. I want to welcome everybody to the live tonight. Hope everyone had a great weekend. I had a great Shabbat yesterday with peace and blessing with each and every one of them. Tonight, we continue to close out this month of a great awakening. I know it's Black History Month, but we're going to call it the month of the great awakening, that our people will hear the word of the Most High and found out who they are. So we're going to continue on our path. Tonight I have with me my partner, Pastor Kelly Richardson. How you doing, Pastor?
Want to say peace and blessings. Want to say shalom to you, my brother.
Shalom. I mean, this is something I'm looking forward to. We're going to do a quick review on some of the things we talked about the last 3 times, and we're going to jump right into it. Are you ready?
I'm on.
And I hope everybody who was listening that you guys would hit the like button and hit the share button pretty much now, because I know we say this a lot, but we're seeing it a lot more now that they're trying to suppress. A lot of people are telling me they're not getting notification, although we do the lives the same time most time every week. They're not getting the notification. Not able to subscribe. Some people who were subscribed have been unsubscribed. So please check and make sure. We like to make sure that you get all the information that we put out. Make sure you hit the hype button if they still have that available. Somebody said they didn't even see the hype button anymore. I don't know if that happened to you, Pastor. I mean, they couldn't find the hype button anymore. So they do a lot of things to keep our people from being a part of what we're doing.
Absolutely, yeah. That's been the case for several years. As you and I discussed this offline a while ago, when I showed you the stats of them actually deleting over 25,000 subscribers. Just removing.
Say that again.
25,000 subscribers they removed.
25,000 people was deleted from the last live that Pastor Richard and I did. Was they just yesterday?
No, not just from this last, over the course of the channel. But far as I haven't checked the stats in a while, but that was when you and I discussed that about 7 to 8 months ago, and I sent you how to get to it in YouTube, and now they removed that feature,
right? That
you can't even see those type of stats. And but what they've been doing is now every time we do an upload, they flag it, to where you have to go through the appeal process, which hinders the reachability. And like last night, the live that you and I were doing with Sister Carol, we knew right off the bat something wasn't right because of the amount of viewers or that people were watching live, and it didn't even crack 400, and then it stayed basically at 320, 330, and usually on a Saturday night, the numbers can be anywhere from 600 to 800, sometimes even 1,000, right? So when I looked into or checked my email and I got a message from YouTube saying that they restricted that video to only being viewable, that live to be viewable only to 18 and over.
And that's the type of tactics they're doing to make sure that people don't hear the truth. The scripture lets us know that people are set free by knowing His word, knowing His truth. And if the powers that be are keeping our people from hearing the truth, then how can we help wake up our people? And that's what they're doing to channels like Pastor Richardson and We Woke Now, my channel, several other channels that are doing the same thing, who are trying to put out the truth. They are making sure that they're suppressing. Now, if we're getting online and we're gaming, or we're doing anything else, or we're talking about women or anything, we can make money. We can go to 100,000, 200,000, whatever. But in the times that we're in today, we're trying to make sure our people know who they are and know their identity. They're trying to suppress. Now, here's where you come in, Brick. My family. Every time that you share on another social media like Facebook, whatever, YouTube, whatever, every time you share these videos, you help us break past the algorithm. Every time you repost this video on your YouTube channel, you might say, "Well, I don't have many people following me." It doesn't matter. When you post on your YouTube channel, at least whoever follow you, it goes past the algorithm again, because people who follow them might see it. So we get to bypass those gate guarders, those gatekeepers who's trying to keep us from spreading the truth.
Absolutely.
So let's jump in it. Tonight, we're going to continue on following the clues, and we're going to go to following the clues back to the Bible, because I believe that the bridge has been set. We've talked about several things since we've been discussing our month of Great Awakening. We wanted to make sure Black history went beyond 1619. So we started off talking about, I think it was the first thing we talked about was the slave Bible. We introduced the slave Bible, how they gave us a Bible, so-called Bible, that didn't contain almost 90% of the original script. 90% of the original script. The Old Testament used to have 39 books. New Testament used to have 27 books, a total of 66 books. If you count the chapters, 1,189 chapters. That's a regular Bible that most of you will find in your church, or you go to a hotel room and look at the Gideon Bible, you find that there. But the Bible they gave us, the Old Testament only had 14 books. 14 books. The New Testament, 18 books. A total of 32 books. 90% of the scriptures was taken away. And the books that was in there, those books wasn't completed. The books they gave us, they made sure they took out things that they didn't want us to see. Now they took out from the Old Testament. They didn't allow but chapter 1 and chapter 2. They skipped. Make sure you didn't see any genealogy, because they didn't want you tracking who's who. I'm not gonna go through all of them, but let me just show you some things they took out. And you notice that the first thing in Mark they took out. In Matthew, genealogy, they took that out. They didn't want anybody tracking anything. What's the excuse they throw on us all the time, Pastor, about when we bring up where the scripture tell you who we are, that tells you what kind of, we can tell about the color of a person, or using skin doctor now, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the famous quote. And for some of those that have been following We Woke now for several years, you guys probably remember in the Christian spaces, that was one of the things that they started trying to bring up. Yes. In a way to try to attack, slander, and basically try to minimize what the text actually says. Like, okay, well, you know what? Okay, you proving this thing, you're proving this point, but now you pushing idolatry in the form of skin doctrine.
Exactly. But
it's not idolatry when they show that old white Christ stuff.
Exactly. But any part of the scripture that had any identification, they took it out.
Yeah.
They took it out.
Yeah.
This guy right here, Charles Colcock Jones, the old Presbyterian minister, and we went by this, and we covered how in his book, the religious instruction of the Negro in the United States, that was the playbook for most of the Southern ministers, or the ministers in the United States during the time of slavery. And we also pointed out, like in the first part of his book, he even pointed to where we came from. Right here in page 2 of his book, the first part of the book, the second paragraph talks about the Spaniards, the trades of the Negroes into the Spaniards to the Portuguese settlement to the on the coast of the New Guinea. It tells you who they're trading. It tells you that Sir Charles granted. Let me see, can I put it up so you can see my mouse? Can you see my mouse right now? It tells you who they were trading and where they traded to, and that pointed to that they knew, because this book was assimilated through most of the South. Now that's one thing we didn't go last time, Pastor, about we went over about what his book showed, and we knew what the book was preaching. It was teaching people how to keep the slaves submissive, how to make sure they was obedient, and they did not revolt against their master, and because they made sure all those chapters, none of that was taught. No freedom, no liberation, nothing. Just submission, just be docile and serve your master. But there was a lot of other things that he did. Any comment?
No, you're hitting it on the nose, and this is where, family. When I say that there's so many layers, and when you get to a point, you feel like you just cleared certain things up. It's like you see another connector that has ambiguity, and you go there. It's like, man, they had this over here too. Let me clear. It's so many moving parts, and so you hit it right on the nail. They know exactly who they enslaved. Every word that they have that they saw in association with us, either they erased it or they profaned it.
And if you want to, and you're right, Pastor, because they erased it or they profane it, but you would think this just one Protestant Presbyterian minister. How did he affect everybody else? And see, that's why I was wondering myself now, how effective. I wonder how many people studied his book. So I went back and I said, well, I'm gonna see what I can find if I research and look and see chat what he would say about that. And I'm gonna show you what I found.
Excellent question. This actually gets into how ideas spread in the antebellum South, not just one man's opinion. Short answer first. There is no surviving historical record that gives a numeric percentage of Southern pastors who read or follow Charles Colcock Jones' program. However, and this part is extremely important, historians do have evidence of influence level, and it was very large. We can measure it indirectly through denominational adoption, missionary societies, reprints, and church policy. Let's carefully walk it through using sources. Part 1. Who Charles Colcock Jones actually was. Charles Colcock Jones, 1804 to 1863, was not a fringe preacher. He was a Presbyterian minister, a plantation owner in Liberty County, Georgia, a founder of organized slave mission systems, called by contemporaries the Apostle to the Slaves. His book, The Religious Instruction of the Negroes in the United States, 1842, was not written as a devotional. It was a manual. It was literally a training guide telling white ministers and slaveholders how to preach to enslaved Africans, what doctrines to emphasize, what doctrines to avoid, how to prevent rebellion through theology. Primary source, Jones Charles C.
Now, throughout this, they're gonna mention primary sources that you can go back yourself and look these up. But this is going to tell you, just one man, how his manual affected the whole South, and not just the South, most of the at that time United States.
The religious instruction of the Negroes.
And real quick, Berean Scholar, what you see is being written by him, right? It goes all the way back, even when you start getting into the connection with King Leopold, his letter, because that's what King Leopold charged his missionaries,
the same
as they were sent to the different parts of Africa, right? And how to indoctrinate them, how to manipulate their children, how to make it so that way our people would build their places of worship and put more to that than their own communities.
Now, if you listen to this and see how this spread throughout Christendom during this time, I want you to see, can you connect the dots and see how it's affecting Christendom right now?
States, Savannah, 1842. Presbyterian Board of Publication Circulation Records. Number 2, evidence of influence. This is how historians measure it. Historians track influence using 4 indicators. A, denominational endorsement. Jones's methods were formally adopted by multiple church bodies: Presbyterian Church in the Confederate States, Methodist Episcopal Church South, Baptist associations across Georgia and South Carolina. Source, Erskine Clark, Dwelling Place, A Plantation Epic, Yale University Press, 2005. Clark is actually the modern biographer of Jones and worked from his letters and church minutes. Clark documents that entire presbyteries required ministers to evangelize slaves using Jones's framework. That means it moved from a book to an official church policy.
Official policy.
Reprinting and distribution. This is the strongest clue about percentage. Jones's book was republished repeatedly, circulated by missionary societies, distributed to plantation owners and clergy. The Presbyterian Board of Publication and the Southern Baptist Publication Society both printed teaching tracts derived from it. Historian Raboteau notes, open quote, "No single individual shaped the religious life of the Southern slave more than Charles Colcock Jones." Albert J. Raboteau, Slave Religion, Oxford University Press, 1978. Close quote. When a historian makes a statement that's strong, it means influence was systemic, not marginal. C. Pastoral training manuals copied him. Many later slave catechisms are basically shortened versions of Jones. Examples influenced by his model: plantation catechisms, Negro pew preaching outlines, slave Sabbath schools. These were used across Georgia, South Carolina, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana. Source, Eugene Genovese, Roll Jordan, Roll, 1974.
Now, you see how this is quickly growing throughout. You notice that Yale, Oxford Press, and others are pushing his doctrine, pushing his material.
Genovese shows pastors were instructed to teach obedience, submission, afterlife reward, while avoiding Exodus liberation themes. That instruction comes directly from Jones's book. D. Civil War Chaplain Records. Confederate chaplains used his same teaching structure among enslaved labor camps and plantation congregations. So what percentage followed him? We cannot give a literal statistic like 63% or 80%, but historians do classify levels of influence based on denominational adoption, geographic spread, reprints, training integration. Scholars place him in what is called normative instructional influence. That means, open quote, his teaching became the standard operating system of Southern slave Christianity, close quote. In practical terms, historians infer a majority of organized Southern Protestant ministers, especially Presbyterian, Baptist, and Methodist, were exposed to or operating under Jones-style instruction by the 1850s. Not every pastor read the book personally, but many pastors were trained by someone who did. So the real answer, direct readers, unknown minority. Indirect followers, through church policy and training, likely most institutional clergy.
That's it. Likely most institutional clergy was instructed by what he taught in the manuscript. So his influence went abroad, spread all across the United States, not just the South. They say Southern state, but all across the United States. Comments, Pastor?
No, I'm just listening. You pretty much nailed it with that. But I have nothing to interject. But you did a great job in pointing that out.
I just want to get there while we go through this, because I didn't point it out last time. But then we went from that. We pointed out that Pope Nicholas II, him signing the doctrine of discovery, and the papal bull that actually started slavery. They gave the church the right, as to say, any land not inhabited by Christian was available for discovery, claim, and exploration. if pagans inhabit that could not be converted, they may be spared. They can be converted, but if not, they could be enslaved or killed. That was, like you said, a declaration of war. If they can't be converted, enslaved, and that's only if they didn't want to convert. That's what they didn't want to convert. They wanted to enslave or kill.
And that's the key with what you're touching on as well is, when we start really dealing with the Spanish Inquisition, it's so convoluted the way that the information, the information, how what's being taught versus when you start really unpacking, what's actually took place and who's who with the actual sources of that time. You can really see how they really murkied the water to where you can't, on the surface, it's hard to make sense of who's who.
Right. And because they made it so, if they were not able to be converted to Christianity, who was making this decision? Who was determining who's able to convert? The Spaniards.
Repeat that again.
I mean, if you read the Doctrine of Discovery, if they could not be converted, well, you enslave them or you kill them. So who had to make that decision?
And family, too, to add to that too, it was all the Abrahamic faiths that was doing their so-called conversions.
Right.
Right. And we'll get into that, some of the sources I'm going to share. But even when you study, when you start really getting into the doctrines of these 1948ers, you'll see that there was things in place that how they would try to explain who we are is and how we are connected to Israel. They start trying to shift the narrative by saying that it's done by way of conversion, right? That a Jewish owner forced us to their slaves to embrace Judaism. So many layers to it. Even though we see the Black codes that say that we cannot practice any other belief system, but basically Catholicism, then Christianity, but all of them played their part with trying to dilute the water by having us try to convert to their interpolations and their reinterpretations and them hijacking an identity that was never theirs.
And you can see on the map where it points where we were taken from Portugal and shipped to those areas you see in the light brown. Can you see it? Is it big enough on there? Let me make sure I make it bigger. Those areas that they were shipping the Hispanic Israelites, in the books we'll read the ancestry, but we know the Black Jews from Portugal and Spain to those areas, then to other parts of the Americas and the Caribbeans. Now, when we talked about him, we also talked about Israel Hill back here in Virginia, the free Black Israel Hill in Virginia historical highway marker, and the fact that marker's there. I think you pointed out last time, Pastor, that for there to be a highway historical marker, that thing had to be approved by the city, by a board. So they knew what it said. They knew that they was marking to show that these were Israelite and freed African Americans. Israelites. They established this community there at this point in Farmville, Virginia. We also talked about the movie Leave the World Behind, how he gave us several clues about the Point Comfort, 1619, the time when they first got there, the ship that brought them there, the White Lion, what the White Lion, how that connected to how the first people were brought to these shores. We also talked about the first couple that they reported that had the first baby here on this land that was born here. It was Anthony and Isabella Negro. You can find them on the records in Virginia. Their family traced to a family that's now named Tucker, because they were in the house of Lieutenant Tucker, who brought them, who I guess who bought them when they came over to the shores. That they were came here on the White Line that took them from another ship. So we also talked about that fact that there was piracy on the high seas, and what were they stealing? What was the booty? What was the treasure? Our people, our ancestors. And how that name Negro and Niger was important because it pointed back to a certain people. Now, I wanted to get through that quickly because I will make sure I gave you time, because what you shared was so impactful. I would say, man, that connects all the dots. Because when we talked about Anthony and Isabella and their name being Negro, because if you see right here where it said their name is Negro, if you go to a certain place, they might say they didn't give their last name, and they didn't have it. And in fact, I think last time I pulled up a chart that showed their name was written. Yeah, it was on the video, and you point out how they spelled it different in two different areas. They did give their last name. Their last name was Negro, and that meant something because it came back from a certain place in Spain, in Portugal, where there was groups of people with that last name. Now, I'm going to let the dots get. I'm going to let you pick it up from here, Pastor, and go ahead and connect the dots further. That we can bridge the gap from this 1619 event back to Spain, back to what we know who we are and where we came from.
Yeah, I'm trying to share my screen right now. Let me see here.
So all the information points back that, number one, they knew who we were through even the doctrine that they were pushing on how to indoctrinate us through Charles Colcock information. His information showed who we were in the first chapter of the book. And then the people that came over in the if you read the docket of the slave ship, their name was listed as Antonio and Isabella Negro. That also pointed to where he come from. So I'm gonna put it down and let you go, Pastor.
I want to say peace and blessings, everyone. Appreciate it, Berean Scholar. Appreciate allowing this time set aside, this delegating this time, just so that way we can continue to educate the people. Really appreciate you having me on your platform. All praises to the Most High. Well, family, we got a lot to cover on this here, and basically just going to use, just some I would say, a popular movie to help set the tone when we get to that point, right? So take notes, and the sources will be presented on the screen, so you could write the sources down. We cannot expect every time we share or do a video and we share a ton of sources that we're going to list it in the description. We did a lot just to even go through these sources. So your part in this is making it a point to write them down, But anyway, let's go ahead and get into it, family. And this is still tying into a question that from those Christian apologist spaces when they try to deny that there were Israelites on the slave ships. And so this is kind of this lesson stems from some of the arguments that I had to present in order to knock all of that down, proving that there were Israelites on those slave ships, not just a handful, but 70%. But anyway, let's go ahead and get into it, family. Let me go ahead and make sure my mouse is working. Let's start with this right here. We're going to set the tone with a couple of words, and I'm going to bring it together to show you why I am asking this question. what is the meaning of Negro? What does it mean? Right? I'm going to go ahead and explain it. And then when we get to a screenshot, you'll understand why. Well, if we go to the etymological dictionary definition online of this word, it's going to tell you that Negro, member of a black-skinned race of Africa. So make a note, Negro, what? A member of a black-skinned race of Africa. It goes on to say from Spanish or Portuguese, Negro or Negro, right? Which means black. Then we see the Latin Negrum, nominative, Niger. We see black, dark, sable, dusky, and when you really start really paying attention to these definitions, you can see how they added a lot of the colloquialisms when it comes to our people. Look at where it says gloomy, unlucky, bad, wicked. All right. But anyway, it goes on to say the Latin word also was applied to the black peoples of Africa. But the usual term were Ethiops or Afar. Okay. In this entry right here is within the same definition. This entry says as an adjective from 1590s, use with a capital N became general early 20th century in reference to U.S. citizenship of African descent. But because of its perceived association with white imposed attitudes and roles, the word was ousted late 1960s in the sense of black. Family, these words have meaning. You'll hear us say this over and over again. And if we're not careful and start embracing different constructs, we can be removing ourselves away from what's rightfully ours, especially when we're dealing with reparations. Right?
Amen.
There's no
Amen.
slave laws or slave codes that was written based upon African American, based on colored. There are slave codes that was written based upon the word black and Negro. All right. I understand with all the other things that people are coming up with. Black, Negro. Those are the laws that was established. But anyway, meaning African American vernacular, the English language as spoken by U.S. blacks is from 1704. French nègre is a 16th century borrowing from Spanish Negro. Older English words were more and blackamoor. So we see how it's establishing, excuse me, that this word is associated with what? Dark, melanated people. And we see here a Middle English word for Ethiopian, perhaps also a Negro generally was blue man or blue men. This is where you get the color blue black. All right. But I want you to remember this here. Make a note of it. Member of a black-skinned race of Africa from Spanish or Portuguese, Negro, black. Okay. So the online etymology definition, and we're going to compare it to the Barnhart Concise Dictionary of the Etymology of the word Negro. So let's see what it says here. And pretty much it's going to read almost the same, pretty simple. It doesn't have some of those stereotypical injections of of the stereotypes, as you saw, like gloomy and all that other stuff, the negative things that they added to this word Negro. But look at what it says. It says Negro. Noun, 1555, black-skinned person from Africa or of African descent. Borrowed from Spanish or Portuguese, negro or negro, however you want to pronounce it. Black. Negro from Latin, niger, which means black. All right. So make a note of that. Just really make a note of that. Okay. So I want to also use this word maroons. And I think we did it last week. Did we do it last Shabbat, Berean, or did we touch on it with me really going over the deception of that word?
You touched on
Sephardic?
the last room. We touched on it last week.
Well, not really the Maroons, but I know we touched on the Sephardics, and that's, well, I wasn't
Right.
sure of how far we. Okay, so family, you guys already know Sephardics is made up, just like Ashkenazi. So I really want to just touch a little bit on the Maroons, and I'm setting this up for a reason. So when you guys are going into Chat GPT or Claude and these different tools, you have to be familiar with what you're asking. Because if you're not, they can give you information that's completely way out in left field. All right. So what are Maroons? The etymology dictionary definition of Maroons or Marranos, look at what it says. It says a Jew or Moor in Spain to avoid persecution, publicly profess conversion to Christianity while privately continuing in the practices and beliefs of their old religion. And then it goes on to say here, 1580s, from Spanish, probably, literally, pig, swine. Where's this probably coming from? That's not an academic, authoritative entry. Am I right, Berean Scholar?
No way. No way.
This shouldn't even be there. Right? But notice how it injects this negativity to it. Now, Berean Scholar, I mean, if someone's doing work on your car and you go to pick it up and you ask them, hey, is everything good? Everything checks out. And they say to you, probably.
If somebody tell me probably, we got issues. I have to hit this.
So why are we seeing this word probably in a lot of definitions, especially when it comes to keywords like this? So family, and then it injects all this other stuff here, Arabic, Muharram, forbidden things, and all, like I say, you see when you go to actually a etymology dictionary, you wouldn't see like a hard copy, especially the older ones. You would not see this input here. This is all modern stuff, injections. But anyway, let's go to the Spanish dictionary because we saw Marrano. It mentions Moors. It meant. Let me go back and make sure I'm not butchering it. Yeah, Jew, a Moor in Spain. That's the key. Make a note of that. But then when we go to the Spanish dictionary and we see a comparison between Marron versus Marrano, let's see what it says here. Look at what it gives us. It says Marron is a noun which is often translated as brown. We didn't see any of that inside the definition of the etymology dictionary, did we?
Nope.
And it says in Marrano or Merino is an adjective which is often translated as dark skinned. Now that's confusing, very confusing. So it's giving this impression like Marron or maroon is a lighter complexion and Moreno is like a darker complexion. Because you see brown and then you see dark skin. This is a bunch of nonsense that we see here. And and the reason why I'm going through this because I'm getting ready to show a key display here, just to show just how they have murkied the water so much that many people start really embracing one way or another. You can embrace a lie and not even know that it's a lie because that lie is so embedded. Right? So let's go here. All right. This screen print, this screenshot is from the movie Amistad. If you guys remember the movie, this scene right here, group of slaves that was raptured or kidnapped from Africa, right? They were taken to Cuba. and more specifically, Havana. At Havana, they got processed, washed, all kinds of things, and they had another auction there. They auctioned them off, and so these group of slaves that was auctioned to this particular ship, to this captain, as you see in here, is actually writing the names into the manifest for the ship's manifest. What stood out for me was when I saw him writing these names. It's like, wait a minute. And I paused it so that way I can see exactly what he's saying, what he's notating. So let me zoom it in so you guys can see what he added here.
Now, this
right?
is actually a clip from the movie.
This is an actual clip from the movie, family. So you see Negro, Marrano, and Benjamin, right? Because this particular slave that was coming across, his name was Benjamin, right?
Right.
But you see Negro, Marrano, or Moreno, and you see the word Benjamin. According to what we shared, what I just shared, right? Negro means what? Black.
Black.
Moreno means what? Black.
Black.
So does that make sense for us to see a double entry, black, Benjamin? Is that Steven Spielberg putting like a lot of film directors, they'll put, like they would call it, eggs, Easter eggs, so to speak, in their films, especially when you deal with a lot of action movies or Marvel, DC, they'll put like what they would call Easter eggs. Is this an Easter egg? But we see Negro, we see Marrano, both of those, according to what I just read, means black. Black, Benjamin. Okay? So let's go ahead and zoom out. So according to how we are taught with defining Negro and Marrano, or Moreno rather, this entry written in the ship's manifest is a double entry of black. So technically, this entry should be read as black, Benjamin. Does that make any sense?
That makes no sense whatsoever.
Makes no sense because ChatGPT, right? And I shared with you, I posted something. I can't remember what it was. I was posting just to see what it was going to give me a comparison between Marrano, right, and Moreno. So Marrano, it gave me, it defined it as being Mediterranean. Mediterranean in terms of skin complexion, Mediterranean towards in terms of people. But Moreno, it said black, dark black. So family, anytime you see Mediterranean and those type of descriptors, those are lies.
Exactly.
Those are modern words that was created to further remove and hijack a history that don't belong to any of these guys, whether it's these modern Arabs, these Ashkenazis, it does not belong to any of them, but they are clever. They create words and then they create definitions. They create their own universities. They create their own scholars to try to further substantiate their lie.
Man, that's right.
They mastered it. All right. So what did Shakespeare, and this is what we're going to really break down, because I'm going to get to a key point here. This is where we're going to really break down exactly how the contemporaries of Shakespeare during that time, how they viewed the true Israelites. And it's so important for you guys to see what they say about the Israelites in Spain and Portugal. It's very important. Now, for the sake of presentation, I want to put this disclaimer out there. Please do not troll the comment section of this video telling us what the word Jew is. Please don't do that. Don't troll with stuff like, hey, we're not the original Jews, or the word Jew, the J didn't exist. We know this. But for the sake of the presentation, because in these sources, we are going to see the word Jew. So please do not troll the comment section. Please do not be like those guys that you would see in the city jumping on your car trying to wash your windshield. That you got to avoid. You know what I mean? You got to coast just to make sure you don't stop.
Wash your windshield, man. Let me wash your windshield.
So, you know what I mean? I got to get, man, I've been saying I'm going to get that clip. I think it's on Hollywood Shuffle when they just dive all over his windshield. So, guys, I'm saying this because sometimes we can major in the minors and start in an attempt to try to hijack the comment section as well as the chat. All right. So again, we are going to, for the sake of the presentation, you're going to hear the word Jew. We know that the word Jew is not synonymous to all of Israel, but for the sake of the presentation, we're going to read the sources and we're going to go off of what the sources say. Amen. So what did Shakespeare, his contemporaries, and historians of their time say about the ancient Israelites, or the Israelites of their time? How did they describe them? What caused the shift? When did the shift occur? Let's start with this right here. We're going to use this as our, if you want to call it our benchmark or our baseline. We're going to use this here. The Atlas Geographus, or a complete system of geography, ancient and modern for Africa, volume 4, page 38. And it reads, right, and this is what we're highlighting here. The present Christians in Africa are partly strangers and partly natives from some of them slaves to the Turks and barbarians and others free. Some of the Jews who inhabited both sides of the Niger derived themselves from Abraham. So family, this is making it clear these enslaved Negroes were Israelites and pointing back to who? Abraham. Others fled hither from Aphia when Vespasian destroyed Jerusalem. And now you get into 70 AD in that timeline. But it goes on to say, or from Judea when was wasted by the Romans, Persians, Saracens, and Christians. Some were banished from Italy. Make a note of Italy. Make a note of this entry right here. Italy, 1342. From Spain, 1462. From the Low Country, 1350. From France, and 1403. And from England in 1422. So make a note of this. I'm going to let it sit on the screen. I'm going to read it one more time again. So make a screenshot or make a note. I'm going to read it one more time to give you guys time to make a note of this. Some were banished from Italy in 1342, Spain in 1462, from the Low Countries in 1350, from France in 1403, and from England in 1422. These all differ in habit and are divided into several wealthy and numerous tribes, but have no dominion, are despised of all nations, and so abominated by the Turks that they are not admitted to be Mohammedans unless first baptized, then made use of only to receive their customs and gather in their taxes. All right. So this quote is important because even though the author uses the latter religious labels like Judaism, this statement itself admits something modern scholars often try to deny, that African history contains deep antiquity connections to the law of Moses and the prophets, or to the law and the prophets, meaning Israelite covenant culture was not foreign to Africa or a late or modern development. Okay. So suspicious rewriting of history is what I want to really point out. This directly strengthens why the Wida or Wida region being recorded as Judah on an older West African map or older West African maps matters because it shows European records preserved an association between the coastal territory and Judah, not merely as a modern or recent claim, but as something printed and circulated in official geography and cartography. In plain terms, the map labeled Judah aligns with the broader historical memory of that ancient Israelite identity markers existed in Africa. And latter narratives try to reframe that continuity as conversion instead of inheritance. And we covered this the last video. All right, not going to go deep into that. But again, I want to reiterate what I told you guys to make a note of. Some were banished from Italy in 1342, from Spain in 1462, from the Low Countries in 1350, from France in 1403, and England from England in 1422. Again, this is very important for you to make notes of because I'm going to prove to you with sources exactly how they described the Israelites of that time, the true descendants of Israel of that time. So this quote should not be treated as neutral religious disputes, but as a deliberate pattern of targeted removal, because the people being referenced and pushed out were the Negro Israelites, who were increasingly stigmatized, criminalized, and marked for displacement. All right, so banishment functioned as an organized weapon. Why? Because it scattered families, destabilized communities, stripped people of protection and property, and made their identity easier to erase or reassign it to others. Right? Think about what happened in this country.
Right.
How so many of our ancestors lost their properties.
Yes.
Fleeing to the north because their life was threatened. And some of them returned only to see that the whites took their land.
In so many cases.
We see this repeat in history over and over again, and you can see this as part of the curses in Deuteronomy 28.
Yes.
So even more revealing is that European converts often assisted in enforcing these expulsions. Let me say that again so you guys can understand. European converts to these religions often assisted in enforcing these expulsions because once Israelite identity was reduced to a controllable religion, this is why you keep hearing 6 million. Because 6 million is associated to what? A controllable religion. The true heirs could be recast as outsiders, while converts positioned themselves as the authorized representatives. Are we not seeing? Have we not seen this playbook even in this country with the Aboriginal, or should I say, the indigenous people?
Yes.
So in that light, these expulsions are not merely dates on a timeline. They are evidence of a long-running agenda of exclusion and replacement where removal of Negro Israelites created the conditions for theft of legitimacy, influence, and inheritance. So are there any proof Negro Israelites were in Spain and Portugal? We're going to answer this question. Now, remember that quote. So we're going to address all those territories pretty much in that quote. Memoirs of the Secret Service of John Mackey Esquire during the reigns of King William, Queen Anne, and King George the First by Sir William Breton, Edward Hawkins. All right, so let's see what they say here. Let's go to page 25. Right, this is a key person here. The Earl of Nottingham, Secretary of State. This is Daniel. His name is Daniel, right? And we're dealing with Great Britain. Now, this is a key description of him on the following page. Let's go to the next page here, 26, page 26. Look at what it says, family. It says here, it describes him as a tall, thin, very black man, like a Spaniard or a Jew, about 50 years old. Let me say that again so you guys can understand. Now, we're getting an idea of how the Spaniards and how the Israelites, the common knowledge of their appearance. Look at how this Secretary of State is being described. It says, in his habit and manners, very formal, a tall, thin, very black man, like a what? Berean Scholar, you see it here. It's like a what?
It's a very black man, like a Spaniard or Jew.
So, family, make a note of that.
Black and white.
Make a note of that. So, Mackie doesn't say tan. He doesn't say swarthy. You don't even see the word dark. He says a tall, thin, very black man. So this is an ambiguous complexion description. He's very direct. Like a Spaniard or Jew, right, proves the comparison being used in that time period. That's just proving, right, how they looked. Right? Spaniard and Jew were common reference points for a very dark complexion. The comparison assumes that the reader already understood that Spaniards and Jews were often described as very dark or black. You cannot make that assumption today because of what? The very people that controls the pages and controls the thoughts. This wasn't considered anti-Semitic back then. Why? Because this was the truth. And everyone knew this to be the truth. So let me say it again. Spaniards and Jew were common reference points for a very dark complexion. The comparison assumes the reader already understood that Spaniards and Jews were often described as very dark or black. All right? So this exposes the modern rewrite of today. Like Jew is treated as a white phenotype. Modern narratives often treat ancient Israelites and the descendants during this time, so-called Jewish appearance, as European white. In other words, Ashkenazi default, Middle Eastern, right? That olive description, not the blue-black, the unripe olive. Right? But they never refer to them as what? Being very black. Now they're trying to use the word Middle Eastern, right? To try to further what? Dilute the truth. All of these descriptions are modern. You was going to say something, Berean Scholar?
It just hit me when you said about the olive complexion and the very black, but I'm not going to get ahead of you, but the ripe olive does fit the description of some of the things they say.
But see, they're not referring to the ripe olive.
Yeah.
They're referring to the green olive.
Yeah.
The sickly olive. The Martian olive. Right? And that's what triggered a lesson that I started doing about 6-7 years ago, titled, well, actually it was longer than that. Actually, it was like 9 years ago. Man, time is flying. The Martian Christ versus the Negro Messiah. That people would rather worship a Martian Christ because what? Martians are always depicted as being green. So they would rather worship a Martian than a Negro Messiah. So this 1773 quote, it proves that in English discourse, Jew can be used as a complexion comparison, a visual type descriptor, a category of dark appearance, very dark appearance to be exact. So the modern so-called white Jew default is not timeless, but it's a later social construction. They created this. It's modern, family. This is not ancient. So this quote proves that in the 1700s, Jew was not a protective European whiteness category. Let me say that again, family. This quote proves that in the 1700s, Jew was not a protected European whiteness category. It was commonly associated with darkness, to the point where an author could call a man very black and say he looked like a Spaniard or a Jew without being called anti-Semitic. This is coming from a quote that I'm a source that I'm going to share with you, but I just want to share this quote so that this put things in perspective as we address those different territories. The Jews of southern Spain and compare them with those of Holland and North Germany to perceive a very striking difference. The Spanish Jew is always dark complexion and his hair is uniformly black. Let me make sure you understand this again. This is dealing with Spain, and we also throw Portugal because that's the same territory. Spain and Portugal on the same island. Let me read it again. The Jews of southern Spain and compare them to with those of Holland and northern Germany to perceive a very striking difference. The Spanish Jew is always dark complexion and his hair is uniformly black. All right. So this is, go ahead.
It says sometime, right? Sometime.
Oh, let's see what it says. Let's see. Did it say sometime or did it say always?
Summertime they're black.
Did it say perhaps or probably?
A percentage of them.
So, family, we're gonna go to the actual source, right? A treatise on physical geography. All right, let's go to it. This is the book right here. All right, but let's go to page 297 and 298, right? And this is the section we're going to highlight here. The argument from intermixture is further rebutted by historical knowledge. Let me read that again. The argument from intermixture is further rebutted by historic knowledge. Thus, the Jews are a people who have ever, according to the prophecy, dwelt alone without intermixing with the nations to this day. Now, this separate race all descended from brown ancestors. For Abraham, Isaac, Jacob must have been as dark as Mar Yohanan, if not darker. Exhibit every shade of color from the black Jews of Malabar. Now, listen, family, how this writer established the baseline. He's going to give you the baseline, of whom we have such an interesting account by Dr. Claudius Buchanan, to the rose and lily complexion of the Jewesses on the banks of Elbe. We need go no further than the Jews of where? Southern Spain, and compare them with those of Holland and northern Germany. This is important, family, to perceive a very striking difference. The Spanish Jews is what? Always dark complexion.
Always.
And his hair is uniformly black, whilst the German Jew is often as fair as any German and has light or red hair with blue eyes. So what they're saying here is saying that the so-called Jews of Germany, converts, they look just like the indigenous people of Germany. They look just like the people in their surrounding. Saying that they don't look nothing like the Israelites of Spain.
Wow.
They're converts. This is confirming converts.
Well, earlier they compared, they said that Abraham must be dark because.
And see, you see how we're unpacking this, right?
I gotta throw this in there.
Message.
So family, we're using their sources. See, when you use their sources, no matter how much they try to lie, they're going to have the truth within that.
Right there. Right there.
They tell on themselves.
Yes.
So the various shades of color observable among the Negro and family, this is where we have to stop allowing them to tell us or give us the impression that if you have lighter complexion, that you're mixed. As if we cannot make all shades, and they're going to acknowledge it in this source that we come in all shades of dark. We come in all shades from blue, black,
yes,
to looking like we're Caucasians. So the various shades of color observable among the Negro or African race, and look at what they use as a baseline, tends to the same conclusion. Along the coast of Guinea, which is low, marshy, and hot, we find jet black complexions. We find what kind of complexion? Jet black.
JET.
We don't use that in our slang. We find jet black complexions, and this is the very country from which American Negroes have been derived. But when we come to the elevated regions of the interior or pass into Southern Africa, we find the very same race of various shades of brown, from a dead mahogany to a light copper. So when you see brown, this is not Michael Brown. When you see brown, we're not dealing with UPS. This is saying that you're dealing with different shades of what? Dark melanated people.
Pastor, I'm reading the chat. How many in the chat know that expression? Use that jet black. Put a 1. Jet black. Do you know what the jet black look like? Where that came from? Put a 1 in the chat. If it's 2, you don't know. See, we got anybody? A 1? Yeah, so Carol said, yeah, she knew. We use that term, but a lot of people, I didn't know would do, we used to, when I first heard this, jet black. Why did we say jet black? There were no jets back then. Some terms you grow up as a young kid hearing, did not know what it would mean. But then I looked at a jet stone. Look at a jet stone. That's black. That's black.
Black Benjamin.
Black Benjamin. So go ahead, Pastor. I'm sorry.
So, but I'm glad you gave that illustration, right? Because again, there was no planes that existed back then.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? All right. So we find the very same race of various shades of brown, from a dead mahogany to a light copper, like that of Falahas, of the Kong Mountain. All right. So they're making it clear that these Israelites of Spain come in what? Different shades of what? Dark or brown, similar to the word arbon.
Come on.
Or ruddy. All right. So some were banished from Italy, Spain, Low Countries, France, England. Okay, let's continue to give clarity to this. Are there any proof Negro Israelites were in Italy, France, and England? Okay. Let's deal with the depiction of Israelites in Amsterdam. This is coming from Shakespeare and the Jews, right? This is a great source, family. So many nuggets, so many cited good sources in this book. And we're going to highlight this area here. So the accumulated experience over 100 years of travel, trade, and conquest had convinced Europeans that some of the accepted stereotypes of Jewish racial otherness, including the belief that Jews were black, needed to be qualified. When William Brereton jotted down his impressions of the Jews in the synagogue in Amsterdam, 1635, he noted that the Jewish men are most black. Did he say just black, or did he put most black?
Most black.
In family, that is equivalent to very black. That is equivalent to jet black. That is equivalent to black Benjamin.
That's the use of an adjective. You use adjective when you have to make you need to describe something that's obvious, something that stands out.
Exactly. To place the point of emphasis.
Exactly.
And insatiably given unto women. Now, this is where you start getting the stereotypes of the sexualness, the sexual drive of our people. Drawing here on contemporary prejudices, linking blackness to lasciviousness or licentiousness. And when the Scottish minister Robert Kirk toured London in 1690, he also paid a visit. So this is almost 60 years later, 55 years later, he also paid a visit to the synagogue, to the same synagogue. There where he observed over 200 Jews worshiping. He noted in his journal that they were all what? Very black.
Black.
Right? Brereton said most black. This person is saying very black. Right? That entry we saw said black Benjamin. Right? And indistinct in their reasoning as what? Gypsies. Wait a minute. You saying that the original gypsies were who?
Black Jews. That's what it say.
It says they were all very black men and indistinct in their reasoning as what? Gypsies. Then it highlights here in the source here, it says by the end of the 17th century, works like the English translation of Francois Maximilian mission of a new voyage to Italy makes it clear that it is a vulgar error that the Jews are all black. Now, see, this person in dispute confirms something to be very true. That's consistent. He's saying, wait a minute, not all the Jews are black. Not all the Israelites that we see of today are black. Look at what he says. This mission observes is only true of the Portuguese Jews, who marrying always among one another beget children like themselves. Consequently, the swarthiness of their complexion is entailed upon the whole race, even in the northern region. So we highlighting what? Spain, and we also highlighting Portugal. But the Jew who are originally of Germany, look at what it says here about Germany.
That's a distinction.
Now, the Jews who are originally of Germany, those for example, I have seen at Prague, are not blacker than the rest of their countrymen. Even Manasseh ben Israel, in his plea for the readmission of the Jews into England, offered evidence that some of the Jews in distant lands differed racially. That's a major red flag saying, hey, wait a minute. We seeing converts here. They got to be converts. These are not the original people. In his humble address, I didn't put it all here. But anyway, so James Shapiro's Shakespeare and the Jews preserves exactly what narratives try to bury. Early modern Europeans repeatedly described Israelites, especially Portuguese and Spanish communities, as black, not as a modern white construct. Right? Shakespeare, Shapiro's documents witness accounts like William Brereton in 1635 visit to Amsterdam synagogue where he wrote, "The Jewish men are most black," and Scottish minister Robert Kirk's 1690 observation in London that they were all very black, even as these writers layered racist stereotypes onto their descriptions. Yep. So even though they put some stereotypes there, like I highlighted about the sexual portion of it, they still confirmed their appearance as being what? Very black, or what? Most black, or the added one we're going to put in there, Black Benjamin. All right? So what becomes most revealing is that later qualifications found in Francois Maximilian's missions, A New Voice to Italy, which calls it a vulgar error that all Jews are black, yet he immediately clarifies that it is true of the Portuguese Jews because marrying always among one another, they begat children like unto themselves, and swarthiness of complexion is entailed upon their whole race, even in northern regions. So they were honoring, if you want to be real about it, the law, statutes, and commandments, because they were not mixing with other nations. They are noting that they were very strict with this, so their complexion wasn't diluted, their culture was not diluted. In the same breath, the text separates Jews originally of Germany as not being blacker than their surrounding countrymen, which exposes that label, right? So it exposes that the label was being applied to different streams of people, while the Iberian Israelites maintained a consistent identity through endogamy. I can't even say it now. Endogamy, confirming my points that Israelites of Spain and Portugal were recognized as black and distinct, and that German Jews reflect a separate historical development. Come on, family. And look at what it says here. This is the quote: Portuguese Jews who, marrying always among one another, beget children like themselves. So that means that what? They were not doing what you hear people try to say, oh, well, you know, all of them were mixing. No one can point themselves to anything. Have you heard that one, Berean Scholar?
Yep. They can't point them to because it says that they did not mix.
It said that they did not mix. So let's look at swarthy real quick. I'm not going to go through this portion of it because this is dealing with Cleopatra, but we already know with Cleopatra, but I'll just highlight a couple of things, family. But I encourage you, look up Cleopatra. I'll give you some references here, and you'll see that she is referred to as being dark, dark skinned, very dark. So when we look at swarthy, it says dark colored, especially skin. And this is going back to the 1580s, this entry. So we see dark colored for as the adjective, tawny, especially in reference to skin. Okay. This is antique gems and rings, right? By King, C.W. King in 1888. That's when he lived. But let's look at what he says on page 326. The same age was a little later, extremely fruitful in heads of Negroes, and also Negrosses, right? Negresses, right? The latter often in the character of Cleopatra holding to her breastplate. So what they're describing her as being what? A Negro.
Negress.
Now, negresses is what? The female Negroes. All right. And then when you go into the Shakespeare play of Anthony and Cleopatra, you know, when you start delve into this play here, you'll see the sources. And I'll try to drop the link once we close out here. I'll drop the link to this, and you guys can go read it yourself. They even define the word tawny in the whole nine. I'm just not going to read all of
And
this.
here's a fact, Pastor. You brought these facts out of the books that are all listed in the Library of Congress. Every single one of them. Every single one of them are on database, so they can be accessed on computer to find out where you can go find the actual book. Am I correct?
Absolutely.
So when you hear scholars and people say, well, no, they don't want to know the truth. They don't want the truth out. When these have been written down, but these books are written down not by people who look like us. It's describing how people look and using distinct adjectives describing it. They were very black, jet black, mostly black. That is obvious that Abraham and Isaac had to be dark.
You hit it on the nail, my brother. You hit it on the nail. And I'm fast forwarding, family, because I just don't want to go and read all of that for the sake of time. So let's confirm Brereton's own words. This is his direct words that was recorded in Shapiro's book. Let's see what Brereton says here. It's going to read pretty much the verbatim. They're men most black, full of hair, and insatiably given unto women. Their wives restrained and made prisoners, and their widows distinguished from all other women, Jews by white veils, hanging to their backs. They will not bury amongst the Gentiles. So this making it clear, describing them to be what? Most black, very dark, melanated people, and making it clear that they didn't mingle. They didn't even bury in the same places. They had their own separate burial place. They will not bury among the Gentiles, but have purchased unto themselves a peculiar burial place, a field. All right, I didn't put it all on there, but you guys get the gist of it. So this source is not modern internet talk or a late invention. It's an early 17th century English traveler documenting that Israelites in Amsterdam were recognized as black and that they maintained separation, customs. In other words, maintained separate customs that match covenant culture, not simply generic religions, right? They weren't practicing religions. They were practicing their culture. All right. So let's deal with the depiction of Israelites in England. Let's see what this says here inside the source. We're going to address everyone that's in that quote that I told you to make a screenshot of. So look at what it says here. Unlike mission, though Manasseh assumes that Portuguese Jews are white, raising predictable questions of what constitutes blackness. The Merchant of Venice provides another instance of this identification of Jews with blackness, in naming Shylock's countrymen Tubal and Chus, later the latter biblical named, immediately recognizable in Elizabethan audiences as the progenitor of all black Africans. The most rigorous English challenge to this position that the Jewish nation was biologically distinct appears in Thomas Brown's consideration whether Jews stink naturally in his pseudodoxia. So look at what it says here. And I'm going to break it down here. This is a quote that of someone I'm going to point out, because as you see here, this is a negative comment right here, right?
Right.
They had this this stereotype that our ancestors stank. All right. So pseudo information on this, right? So in here, right, this is a quote from this book. If they intermarried and mixed with other peoples, how could Paul's prediction in Romans about the future calling of the Jews ever realize? So this is a quote from Shapiro's book and a question. And he answers the question right here, right? It says here, right? How could Paul's prediction in Romans about the future calling of the Jews ever be realized? Some writers pointed to the Jews' dark or black skin color as a marker of their racial difference. So they saying, put it in our face, say, hey, here's the sign, the skin doctrine, proof, and evidence by what? Their skin complexion, that this is what fulfilling and confirming Paul's prophecy as Israel going to always be a distinct people. Have Yahweh forgot about Israel? Yah forbid. So it's saying skin color as a what? Marker, even though he's using the word racially, but there is a distinction. We already read it thus far that there was a distinction in the appearance of the Israelites in Spain and Portugal compared to all the other territories like Germany. Those that originated in Germany. So it goes on to say, Jews were at once the opposite of Christians and at the same time potential Christians. In other words, they didn't physically look like those Christians of that time.
Yeah.
Because they were looking like they're Romans. They were looking Europeans. From a Christian's perspective, the only thing that stood in the way of their conversion, my mouse is acting up. So James Shapiro's Shakespeare and the Jews reveals how early modern Europeans framed Israelites through overlapping categories of nationality, race, and belief, while still treating them as a unique, distinct people whose identity could not be dissolved through mixture. But this is what we hear today, right? Oh, everybody's mixed.
Yeah.
He then highlights a key contradiction. Israelites were considered a race, yet an exceptional one because they were believed incapable of commingling with other people, since intermarriage would undermine Paul's prediction in Romans about their future calling. So he's making it clear that, wait a minute, if we saying that Paul prophecy, if we believe Paul's prophecy, then if we believe that all the Israelites have changed, then that's undermining Paul's prophecy. That's basically what they're saying. What he's saying in this argument. All right. So within that framework, some writers pointed to dark or black skin as a marker of Israelite racial difference, showing the physical appearance was repeatedly used as an identifier, not just theology. So how did others during Shakespeare's time describe the Israelites? Well, this is a guy by the name of Paul Isaiah. I'm just going to go straight to his quote. I'm not going to read all of this here. I'm just going to go directly to his quote. All right. This is coming from Judeo or Orum. All right. Let's see here. And this is the screen print from the source family. All right. So this is an argument, right? A discussion between a Christian and an Israelite, right? And look what the Christian says, right? Well, this is what the Israelite says, the Jew says, and God save you, how you know me to be a Jew. So this person is saying, how you know me to be an Israelite? How do you know who I am? How can you tell that you speak so in Hebrew with me? Art thou a Jew and one of Our people, the Christian. I am not a Jew, neither of thy people, neither am I acquainted with you, but from the form of your face, I knew you to be a Jew. For you Jews have a particular or peculiar color of face, different from the form and figure of other men, which thing hath often filled me with admiration. For you are black and uncomely. He basically said he black and ugly.
Mhm.
And said, and not white, right? It says, and not white as other men. But it said, you are black. And he, going back to that stereotype, said, you are black and you're not attractive. And you're not white as other men. In other words, you're not white. All right. So this source directly reinforces the latter writer tries to blur. Israelites were often recognized in early modern discourse, not merely by religion, but by visible identifiers. The skin complexion.
Wow. Can I interject
And
right quick, Pastor?
go ahead, my brother.
I just saw some of the Daily Repentance put that her sister, who she's referred to our channels, my channel and your channel, has been showing our channels for Black History Month in the classroom.
Wow.
I mean, and that's what we want, that this information to get out. That people would know who you are, because I grew up all my life not know who I am. Most of you on this channel in the same position. This is young people to hear the truth. That's what it's all about. Thank you. Also, thank you for the super chat from Live Laugh and Loving This. Thank you for the super chat. I praise. I hope everybody will thank her and bless her. But that's the biggest blessing, to hear the young people knowing the truth. Go ahead, Pastor.
Amen. Amen. All praises to the Most High. So in the dialogue, the speaker asks how he is known to be a Jew. And the reply is blunt. He is known from the form of his face because he is described as black and uncomely, not white as other men. That's a mic drop right there, family. Even though we want to share multiple. So this statement aligns with wider records we've documented, such as travel accounts, geography texts, Shapiro citations, showing that Europeans repeatedly associated Israelites, especially those connected to Iberian streams, with blackness as a defining marker, undermining the modern conversion narrative that treats Negro Israelites as late adopters of someone else's culture. All right, so let's go back to the source. This is another key point that he's going to bring out. He brings out a key point here about religion, because religion is the reason why we see the confusions of today. And you guys know from day one that you guys have been following We Woke Now, that you've been following Berean Scholar. The point of emphasis have been placed on all of these Abrahamic religions being a problem.
Right.
Remember, Berean Scholar, when I made the post about the Muslims, I had people from the Muslim community coming at me.
It came out of the woodworks.
Matter of fact, remember that clip I used to play when a guy said DNA testing is illegal in Israel?
Right.
It was an Arab guy, and he said, "What happened to the original Jews?" He has a following of almost 7 million people. Decided because of that video and because of me teaching the truth about them, he tried to get had YouTube to send me copyright strikes.
Oh, on that video.
Off that video, that little clip.
Mm.
So I just said, I just allow YouTube just to remove it. Remove it altogether. That's why I don't even play that clip anymore.
Mm. You see? And that's every one of them. Every one of the Abrahamic, so-called Abraham, they're not Abraham related. That did not go back to Abraham. Judaism, Christianity, and Islam did not go back to Abraham. But what they call Abraham leaders, they all are complicit.
Absolutely. And family, this shows and proves that they are watching us.
Yes.
They are paying attention to everything we do. Everything we do. You know, I don't say it because I don't want to take any credit, but there's a lot of Christian places that are clipping videos and showing it on their channels. And I'm like, hey, go for it. You know what I mean? You got people in the conscious community that's been clipping videos and using it. I'm like, just get the truth out there.
As long as you're doing it in the truth, you're sharing the truth, and you're not trying to twist it. Yeah, get it out there.
And so, family, pay attention to the point that he's going to raise in his book, right? Shapiro, listen to what he says. I'm gonna read it out. Listen to what he says about nationalism, how this got injected into the scheme of things and really began to cause the issues that we see today. Contemporary scholars have traced the origins of modern racism and nationalism back to the 16th century, a time when European nations were coming into contact on an unprecedented scale with other peoples. And what this really saying, Negroes, communities, territories that was far greater than what they could ever imagine, like Napoleon going to Egypt and didn't expect to see what he saw. So contemporary scholars have traced their origins of modern racism and nationalism back to the 16th century, a time where European nations were coming into contact on an unprecedented scale with other peoples. Indeed, they are quick to point that the words themselves, in other words, race as well as nation, only began to acquire their current meaning at this time. Much of this research is flawed, however, by its secular bias. It has been remarkably slow to acknowledge the extent to which theology, and and Berean Scholar knows this, but some of you guys may not understand this. Theology is not just Christian, it's not just Catholic, it's also Islam, it's also Judaism, because theology simply means the study of God.
Come on.
So when you see theology, this is dealing with what? The study of, I'm just using God for the sake of the narrative of the word that we have on here, the study of God, but it applies to what? All different religious systems, but primarily here dealing with the Abrahamic faiths. Shaped the way people thought about both racial and national difference in early modern times. As a result, this scholarship has necessarily ignored the place of the Jew in the formation of early modern European ideas about race and nation, despite the fact that so much theorizing about these topics in the 16th and 17th century was produced in response to theoretical problems posed by the Jews. What was the theoretical problems? The appearance.
Exactly. You can't hide that.
So again, for Shakespeare's contemporaries, Jews were not identified by their religion alone, but by national and racial affiliations as well. So James Shapiro, Shakespeare and the Jews exposes a major weakness in much modern scholarship on racism and nationalism by showing that it often begins with a secular assumption. Come on, family. I wish I had the I couple. When you assume, right, Remember, we talked about this. They always create what? A word, a construct, and then they began to backdate it based off of what? Their assumption, and began to rewrite history. So again, begins with a secular assumption that blinds it to the true engine behind early European racial thinking theology. So while contemporary scholars correctly trace the emergence of modern race and nations categories to the 16th century, an era of intensified European contact with other peoples, Shapiro argues that their research becomes flawed when it ignores how deeply religious doctrine shaped the way Europeans defined differences or difference in the first place. All right. Because of this bias, scholars have been slow to acknowledge that the figure of the Jew was central to early modern European theorizing about race and nation, even though many of the key arguments and classifications produced in the 16th and 17th centuries were crafted specifically in response to the problem the Jews posed for European identity. So Shakespeare confirms that race thinking was not merely political or economic, but it was a theological first and only later became secularized and institutionalized. So again, started with religion. So let's see how this problem really escalated and what they wanted to address, the tactics that they want to use to address this issue. Because as I proved with earlier sources, the Israelites in Spain and Portugal, they did not marry outside of their own people.
Exactly.
So look at how they tried to address this issue. This is coming from the source is Repeal of the Jews Naturalization Bill, right? 1735, page 106. Man, it blew my mind when I read this. As to the first of these two rules, I am sure it stands in need of no illustration. But as to the second, I shall suppose that for strengthening our sugar colonies, for peopling them with subjects instead of slaves, a scheme were proposed for naturalizing all the blacks born in any of them without any condition whatsoever. I will say that our adopting such a scheme would be ridiculous. So what are they doing? They're saying, let's come up with a scheme, right, to get them to be more committed, to be more pro-oppressor, the culture of the oppressors, right? And it says here, because of their progeny would always continue to be a distinct people. So they're saying, even if our ancestors embraced their culture of the oppressors, the appearance is still going to make sure that, because we're still going to have a distinct appearance. We're still going to look different. We're still going to stand out. But look at here. But if the conditions were added that no such blacks should be naturalized unless they declare themselves Christians, and that no such black man should be naturalized, sound like being a Jew, right? Unless he married a white woman, nor any black woman unless she married a white man, the ridicule of the scheme would be very much softened, because their progeny would in time unite and coalesce with the rest of the people. It might a little alter the complexion of the people of these islands, but they will all become the same people and will look upon themselves in no other light than as subjects of Great Britain.
There you have it. Assimilation.
So this must show the imprudence and even the ridiculousness of our adopting the doctrine that all Jews born here are to be natural born subjects for their latest posterity whilst they continue Jews, right? It goes into some other stuff, but I didn't put it all here. But you see, this is where they wanted to, in order for us to be accepted, in order for us to, be accepted among them, they're saying, okay, men, you gotta marry white women. Women, you got to marry white men of their culture. And they believe that by doing that, you'll hold on and you'll value their culture more than our own culture.
Exactly.
Are we not
Assimilate.
seeing that today?
Yep. You got to assimilate to the culture, assimilate to everything else.
They're not playing, family. So I want to double back here, and we'll wrap up with this here. Because early on, what 2 or 3 weeks ago, you started with this source here. Charles Colcock, you mentioned it today in your reviewing of what we covered thus far. The religious instructions of the Negroes in the United States, right? 1842, page 2. Okay. I want to double back here for a second, and I'm going to show you why, and may have to leave it on a cliffhanger, right? Since we got one more, I think we got one more weekend, so I may end it on a cliffhanger, right? So it was in the year 1501 that Isabella of Spain granted permission for the introduction of Negro slaves into Hispaniola, but such only as had been born in Spain or in slavery among Christians. And in the following year, a few had been sent into the New World. In 1508, the Spaniards opened a direct trade in slaves and imported Negroes into Hispaniola from the Portuguese settlements on the coast of Guinea. Ferdinand V, by royal ordinance, enjoined a direct traffic in slaves between Guinea and Hispaniola in 1511, and Charles V in 1512 to 1513. In 1517, Charles V granted a patent to one of his Flemish favorites containing an exclusive right of importing slaves, 4,000 annually, into Hispaniola, Cuba, Jamaica, Puerto Rico. This favorite sold his patent to some Genesis, or am I pronouncing it right? I hope I am. Merchants for 25,000 ducats, and they were the first who brought into the regular form of that commerce for slaves between Africa and America, which has since been carried on under such revolting circumstances and to such an amazing extent. Now, this is important, right? Who are these enslaved Negroes, right? Is this word Negro simply a color descriptor? Is there more to this word Negro? What is their ethnicity rather? What is it? How was it erased? Whoever controls the pages controls your thoughts, right? Let me introduce you guys to a man by the name of Yahya Negro. I'm not going to go into the details of it. I'm just going to touch on him just a little bit. This is from the Jewish Encyclopedia, Volume 12, Yahya the Negro. Portuguese family of the Middle Ages, members of which were prominent in Portugal, Spain, Italy, and Turkey. Certain individuals of the family bore the additional cognomen Negro with reference to the Moors, from whom several of their estates had been ordained. The more prominent members of the family are as follows. So we already proved Spain and Portugal, the Israelites were always what? Very black, very dark, most black, jet black, right? Now, this is coming from the Jewish Encyclopedia, Volume 12, this entry. This entry is coming from the Jewish Encyclopedia, Volume 12. Right? So I made sure you could see the screen. This is a screenshot here.
Yep, that was a screenshot.
Right? This is a screenshot. This is the actual screenshot of the actual volume, the book, Volume 12. So that way you guys can see this is not something that's made up. Right? No matter how much they try to lie, the truth still prevails.
Take a
We
picture.
prove
It'll
with
last longer.
sources. Go ahead, Berean Scholar. I'm sorry.
Take a picture. It'll last longer. That's it. Go ahead.
Right. So we proved that they were all black Benjamin in their color, the skin complexion. So it says here, with reference to the Moors, from whom several of their estates had been obtained. The more prominent members of the family are as follows. So we see Yahya, right? He's very prominent, right? Had the king. He had a good relationship with the king. He was a soldier. He was a warrior, right? And because of all what he had done, the king granted several pieces of property to his people, to him and the people that comes, that will come from him, but also in a specific territory, right?
Exactly.
So then we have Yahya ibn Ya'ish, right? Flourished in Lisbon in the 11th century, died about 1150. He was held in high esteem among the Jews, and King Alfonso I honored him for his courage. After the conquest of Santarem, the king presented him with 2 country houses that had belonged to the Moors, wherefore he assumed the name Negro. Family, it's not just a color, but it's also a name of what?
Surname.
It's a surname of high what? Respect.
High honor.
Take you all the way back to Acts, chapter 11?
Chapter 13.
In chapter 13, right? I'm thinking of chapter 11, but Simon.
Exactly. Called.
Because it's not just identifying who he is in terms of his skin tone, but it's also a title. It's a name of what? Respectability. It's an honorable label.
That's right. That's right. Because he was a leader.
He was a leader.
Oh, man.
So it goes on to say here, here's another one. Joseph ibn Yahya ha Zakin, grandson of Yabin, Ya'ash. So Ya'ish. So you see, this is his bloodline. And they even have an entire chart here.
Yep.
Lived in Lisbon in the middle of the 13th century and was so wealthy that he built a synagogue at his own expense. He was the author of a Talmudic commentary that is no longer extant. Isn't that interesting, right? It just disappeared. He supposedly wrote a Talmudic commentary. Notice they put the word Talmudic, and understand we're going through the 1948ers disseminating this information, but mysteriously his writings is no longer, his commentaries on whatever he's making commentaries on, more than likely the scriptures, because he owned a synagogue, right? He owned a place of worship. He built it himself out of his own resources. So whatever expressions, whatever commentary he providing over the law and the prophets, they didn't want to hear that. They had to get rid of this.
I'm glad you said it like that, because that's exactly what I was saying. They didn't want to hear that. They didn't want to hear that.
Come on, family. If they actually had, I wonder, man, somewhere that commentary has to still exist.
Exactly.
And I wonder what it was saying about.
A true Israelite telling the truth.
A true Israelite. And it is noted that Yahya, right, is in the bloodline of King David by way of Solomon. So these are Negroes. Oh, come on, family. So King Alfonso, this is going back to King Alfonso. This is a quote from here, just to reiterate. King Alfonso I honored him for his courage. After the conquest of Santarem, the king presented him with 2 country houses that had belonged to the Moors, wherefore he assumed the name Negro. And again, this is from the Jewish Encyclopedia, volume 12. But look at what it says about Portugal in volume 10, right? That's why I'm putting screen prints so you guys can see that this is not something we're making up. The influence of the canonical law was felt much later here than in Spain and not sovereignly. I mean, so violently. This should have a space there. Yeah, it didn't put a space there. So violently. So this is also now starting to see make reference to of some of the issues they began to have with the Christian Catholic Church. So it says here, until the expulsion, there were no active hostilities against the Jews in Portugal. Alfonso Henriques, excuse me if I butcher his name, the conqueror and first king of Portugal, found Jews already settled in Ceuta, Lisbon, and Beja. And according to Herculanus, he is said to have found villages and localities which were wholly or to a great extent inhabited by Jews. He pursued the tolerant policy of his grandfather, Alfonso VI of Castile, and issued letters of protection to the Jews as also to the Moors of Pharaoh. Sound familiar, right? Make you think of Pharaoh, right?
Yep.
He moreover employed Jews in his service, as for instance, Dam Yahya Aben Yaish, ancestor of the widely branching Yahya family. So he's a Negro. His services is being what? Being used by the king, who was the receiver of customs and to whom he gave 2 estates. And this is key, aldeas dos Negros, which had belonged to the Moors. Alfonso Henriques, or whatever, Henriques, however you pronounce it, son of Senco the first, also was tolerant. Likewise, Senco's son, Alfonso II, who employs Jews as farmers and of the taxes and as tax collectors, although under the hostile attitude of the church began to be felt. Alfonso confirmed the resolutions passed by the Cortes and Coimbra in 1211 to the effect that a Jew who had been baptized might not return to Judaism, and that no Jew might prevent his children from embracing Christianity or disinherit them, right? But this is a key quote. Dam Yahya Aben Yaish, right? He's the ancestor of the widely branching Yahya family, who was his receiver of customs, right? And to whom he gave 2 estates, aldeas dos Negros, which had belonged to the Moors. So what does this mean? Aldeas dos Negros actually translates to the village of the blacks.
Yes.
Family, you could just Google this. You could type this in. Make sure you're referring to Spain and Portugal area. Don't, because it may put you into other areas like Brazil.
Right.
But they still want to tell you the village of the blacks, but they try to point you elsewhere. It's not going to automatically default to these territories. Right? So Aldeas dos Negros actually translates to village of the blacks. Negro land? The original Negro land? Give you clarity to the Negro land area? Anyway, so the Jewish Encyclopedia, volume 12, right? Who controls the descendants of the Yahya Negros? Who controls them? Because this is now we're dealing with a key piece of history. And I'll close it out with this here, right? Oh, you know what? I didn't put the animations here. Let me fix this real quick. All right, let's make sure. Which one? Why did it do that? Mm-hmm. All right, let's see here. I'm just making sure why did it? All right, I guess it's fine. But anyway, so this is what I'm highlighting here. And this gives some key information about some turmoil on who wants to control these Negroes? Yeah. Who wants to have control over these Negroes who are descendants of David by way of Solomon, who has been very successful in carrying out whatever instructions by the king? So now you have the powers that be want to have control over this group of people. The Jews were prominent in Portugal. Wait a minute. Let me make sure you understand that, family. Let me go back here so you can see it here, even in this quote. It says the Jews were prominent where? In Portugal. Let me zoom that in. Still confirming the earlier sources. You guys see that? The Jews were prominent in Portugal.
They're in black and white.
After the death of King Leonora, disposed David or Dawad Judah and the Jewish collectors of customs at Lisbon on the representations of the city deputies. But when she wished to have her daughter Beatrix and the latter's husband, John I of Castile, recognized as regents of the country, and the people rebelled, killed Leonora's favorite, and proclaimed John vice regent of the kingdom. Leonora fled, accompanied by her confidants, the above mentioned D. Judah and the wealthy D. David or Dawad Negro Yahya. That's important right here. Still making a distinction with this Negro right here. Out of the family of who? Yahya. Disputes between her and Job or Jabin the first, Castile, who waged war against Portugal, ended in an open breach on the occasion of the nomination to the head rabbinate of Castile. Leonora demanded the place of her favorite D. Judah, but the king, at the desire of his wife, appointed D. Dawad Negro Yahya. Embittered by this, Leonora plotted against the life of her son-in-law, but her plans were frustrated by David Negro, right? And I got to make sure that that's an actual translation right there. And Leonora was banished to a convent in Tordesillas. The life of D. Judah was spared on the plea of Dawad Negro. The possession of D. Judah and D. David and other Jews who had sided with the banished king, had fled from Portugal, were confiscated and given to the bravest knights by D. John, who became king after the withdrawal of the king of Castile. So I'll just stop right here, Berean Scholar, because I know it's more that we could go here, but
it's so much. It's so much. You've done so well, brother. I mean, this is black and white issue that's pointing to all the way back from Antonio and Isabella Negro to their family where they came from with that same surname, Yahya Negro, David Negro, the village of Black Negro. Wow.
And family, this is why we say they know who we are.
They know.
And what's interesting, what's good about this too, is one thing that gets brushed, overlooked, right? Paul, he visited Israelites in Spain.
Yes, he did.
He traveled these areas. And matter of fact, I'll just pull it up. I'll just read it real quick. Romans 15:24.
Thank you.
Whatsoever I take my journey into Spain, I will come to you. I will come to you, for I trust to see you in my journey, and to be brought on my way thitherward by you, if first I be somewhat filled with your company. Right. And he continues on, right? Verse 25, But now I go unto Jerusalem to minister unto the saints. Verse 26, for it hath pleased them in Macedonia and Achaia to make a certain contribution for the poor saints which are at Jerusalem. Verse 27, and it says, it hath pleased them verily, and their debtors they are, for if the Gentiles have been made partakers of their spiritual things, their duty is to minister unto them in carnal things. Wherefore I have performed this and have sealed to them this fruit. I will come by you into Spain.
So there you have it. Back to the Bible, right back to Bible. Paul spoke about going to Spain to minister to the dispersed Israelites that were there doing his ministry. The very ones we just got to reading about their ancestors in these books that were written in the when someone was in the 14th or 13th century, 12th century, 10th century. These books they still writing about the people who was there in that area. How they got there through the when they were dispersed through the attacks from the Babylonian attack, but in other ways they got in that area. But our people were also following the breadcrumbs. Just when you got brought back John Colcock, I mean that minister, the second page of his document about how to minister or how to evangelize the slave, told him where these people came from: Portugal and Spain.
Yeah.
So they knew who we were.
Yeah. And so family, and I didn't have a chance to do it because I'm gonna probably do this teaching next Shabbat, and I include, the Negro, how I taught about the word Negro and just really tie this in. So that way, when we see the word Negro, it wasn't a derogative word that is made out to be now.
Exactly.
And it's in old dictionaries saying that this word was not it wasn't a word of, to degrade. It was a word. It was an honorable word.
I think the turning point was 1555.
Yeah.
And we're not saying that all the people that came over on the slave, it's not a trade, slave kidnap, all came from Spain and Portugal, but that major family did come down. It was shipped down to West Africa and the Horn of Africa, and we also had some that were already there. So this still connects us back to our people, because when you look back, if everybody who's done their DNA, the tribes we point to the same people who say they came from the same people that these people came from. That's our family. That's our ancestors. We have roots. We have heritage. We have culture. We have language.
Yeah. And family, this is something that they will not teach, and you'll never hear this in, regardless of what level of academia you go to.
But again, all these books are available, and they are in the Library of Congress, and you can find them, and you can research these books.
Yeah.
Pastor, I just have to thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you. That was beautiful. That was beautiful. I mean, the first time you said that, I was like, wow. It's not a mic drop. That's just you destroyed the mic, knocked off the speakers, and then threw some at the soundboard.
Well, I appreciate it, my brother.
Because after hearing this, the description they're saying there's no skin doctrine. There's a verification of who they were, how they look, and that's who we are.
Yeah,
family, you are blood descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. You are God's chosen people. There's something special and unique about you. You are the apple of his eye. It's time for us to turn back, follow his laws, commandments, and spread this news so others can see this. That's what we're called to do in this time of darkness, when everything's going around us. You know, we did a live last night about what's happened to our young men, you know, found hanging from trees, college-age men, found it, they're trying every day to distinguish us. I was Sister Carol sent me some other report of some police officer who shot another young man, unarmed, just shot him.
Yeah. And that it's happening
every
so
day.
much. And because of this administration, you have news outlets that are scared to even report it. They're scared to even report this stuff that are happening.
But thank you again, Pastor. I'm not going to hold you guys any longer. I want to thank you all who've been here. Also, thank the Super Chat, those who who help us in sharing this venture. Please, and I know, just like Daily Repentance said, that some people that she's tried to refer to kind of couldn't subscribe. Try, if you can't subscribe, you can't use the subscribe button on your phone. Try your computer, try your TV. Just keep coming back, because they're trying to stop us, but keep coming to the channel. We will be putting out information every day. Please visit We Woke Now. He's always putting out great information. Always teaching. If you don't have a place to fellowship, you don't have a place to receive a good word, good solid teaching on the Sabbath, please go. You can go to We Work Now. What We Work Now?
I just dropped the link in. Let me see.
Okay.
Here.
Because my family and I would sit and we would read and do a thing, but when I also go to We Work Now and fellowship and listen to the people there, because number one, I have I love visiting there. I know the people. You know, you feel the love of the Most High when you come in, and it's does good word. And I happen to know the Puritan preacher. He's okay too. So
yeah.
So guys, thank you for visiting, man. Thank you. I love you. Your last word, Pastor. You can close it out.
Okay, let me put the We Woke Now extended link in here. I'll put the
We Woke Now
extended. Let me put it here.
I don't know why I stopped there. You know, you say when you get a certain age, there's three things that happen. First, your memory, then I forgot.
See? Hallelujah. Well, family, I'll just say this as thank you, Berean Scholar, for allowing me to bless your platform with just breaking bread with your subscribers. Really appreciate it. And in the words of the Most High, the words of Yahweh, right? And family, that and I just want to say this real quick. You know, Yahweh, they know his name. And there's no coincidence. We see a bloodline connected to David, Yahya, and they're profaning him as well.
Yeah.
Trying to whiten him out and his descendants out. And so that's basically what the scripture talks about as well, profaning the Father's name. But anyway, Exodus chapter 14, verse 13 to 14, the words that the Most High, the words that Yahweh gave to Moses to encourage Israel as they were panicking. They came to a dead end. The Egyptians is gaining on them, and they seem to be in a place of hopelessness. And the Most High gave Moses these encouraging words to give to Israel, but it started with him, encouraging Moses himself. Fear ye not, stand still, see the salvation of Yahweh. These Egyptians that you see here today would not have power over you ever again. The Most High will fight for us, but we have to hold our peace. The Hebrew word that's inside the text is charash, which means be quiet. Because sometimes we could just talk too much. You know, quite honestly, we could just talk too much.
Yep.
So we have to learn how to calculate silence. In other words, operate in calculated silence. We don't have to always say something. Just sit back and watch. Sometimes your silence is say more about you than always having something to say. Can't go back. Can't stay here. Keep moving forward. Shalom.
Shalom. May Yah bless you and keep you, make your face shine upon you, and give you peace.
What do you think about this topic? Remember to be a Berean scholar. As it is written in the book of Acts 17 verses 11 to 12. Now the Bereans were more noble-minded than the Thessalonians, for they received the message with great eagerness and examined the scriptures every day to see if these teachings were true. It's time to deepen your understanding and see your reflection in the sacred pages. Please click subscribe, and click the notification bell to stay up to date with the Berean Scholar channel.